A wonderful afternoon, and thanks for joining us on our program on television. Africa Discourse is the program. My name is Evan Sunokogie. Do you know that on this program we look at issues on the continent of Africa? I remember some months ago I said that we're going to be having a series of elections in Africa this year, 2023. Of course, I talked about Nigeria's election. Then, of course, I also mentioned election in Nigeria, in Liberia, which incidentally is likely going to be the very last election for this year, 2023, in Africa. Well, today is the 9th day of October. Come tomorrow, the 10th day of October, Liberia is going to be having general elections. And of course, the election is going to be for the presidential election and also for the senatorial election into the Liberia Senate. And also we'll have election into the Liberian House of Representatives. So it's going to be all encompassing. And one man stands clear, talking about George Weah, the incumbent president of Liberia, who is running for the second term. You know, his own position now as a candidate in the election, it's very, very interesting because a country that has, been faced with two civil wars. So we had one in 2003, in 1989 in the first one, and of course we also had another civil war in Liberia sometime in 2003. And of course a country also that has been riddled with two pandemics, you may want to say. The Ebola pandemic came, it riddled Liberia, and of course we also have the COVID-19 that also came and riddled Liberia. So the big question is, how can George Weah survive tomorrow's election in Liberia? And it means the fact that there are issues that borders on corruption. For most analysts, they say that George Weah has failed because he has not been able to really do anything about corruption in Liberia. Well, good ones know that we understand that a lot of persons are so interested in tomorrow's election in Liberia. We'll understand that the West African Elders Forum, as headed by our own former President Goodluck Jonathan, has actually led a delegation, and just today, that delegation arrived at Monrovia, that's the capital of Liberia, to monitor tomorrow's election. Then also, we also understand that the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has also sent a delegation, and that delegation is being headed by former INEC boss, Atahiru Jega, to monitor tomorrow's election. So all these are some of the things we're going to be talking about today on the program, Africa Discourse. What we are so privileged to have a foremost politician in a local government area in Edo State, talking about former candidates under the Labour Party in the just concluded local government election in Edo State. Sir, you're welcome to this program, Africa Discourse. Former Sister Oreke, you're welcome to this program.
Thank you, Evan. Nice to have you. Nice to having me after such a long time.
All right, so the election has been done now, the local government election. You want to give us one or two insights about how you feel about the election?
Well, we were not surprised, but let me just put it this way. We have gone to court to seek redress on the very outcome of the election. And, it will be sub judice to go further into the matter. So that's where we are at the moment. Okay, all right, let's leave that now because that's not the point of our discussion on this afternoon. All right, so let's look at tomorrow's election in Liberia. It's going to be very, very interesting, very, very decisive. And of course, George Weah, how he stands to win the election is a big question in the lips of many people. So what are your take on George Weah as a candidate and of course on the election generally? First of all, I want to take it back from 2017 when George Weah, having failed on two occasions to mount the saddle as president of Liberia, he finally succeeded in 2017, and the entire Liberian people, they were gifted with some renewed hope that a young man has come to the saddle. But the stories we have heard between then and now hasn't given much, to really write home about. But however, an election is about to take place on Tuesday, as it were. And what we always say concerning an election is, there are no sentiments. Let the voice of the people be heard. And Liberia must have also taken time to look at the variables. They must have taken time to look at where they are coming from. and also the other candidates from the other political parties. I understand there are about 17 or thereabouts.
About 18 political parties.
About 18
now.
political parties. So
Yeah.
they have taken, I think they know the character of each and every one of us. Will it be a question of the devil you know is better than an angel you don't know? Or is it possible for them to make up their minds outrightly and say, well, this is who we want? But having said that, my own concern is not really the candidates that the people will be choosing on that day. My concern is basically the process. It is the process, because Africa has become very synonymous, especially the black African nation has become very synonymous with processes that are dented with a lot of irregularities when we talk about elections. And people from this region have had reason to cry here and there that their will is not being established after going out to vote and choose a particular candidate. I think that's what should be of utmost importance to us, that the election goes on as it should go. So whoever the Liberian people have is a testimony to what Liberia has become, how much developed Liberia has become at this point. Because a nation that faced 2 civil wars in quick successions, you do not really expect that a lot would have happened to change the economic landscape of that country as it is right now. But however, if Liberia, amongst the 18 that is available to them, can be made to go to the poll freely and choose a candidate, good or bad, and the process is a process that we cannot look back and say, yes, though we have reservations about these candidates, but the people have spoken, and since this is what they have said, then let it be the way it is.
Okay. Now, what do you make of politics, election in Africa? A situation whereby an incumbent is perceived to have failed. Take, for example, the issue with George Weah in Liberia. He's done one tenure, and of course, that one tenure has been marred with corruption allegations here and there. For lots of Liberians, George Weah has failed. Now, what do you make of African politics now, that you have leaders who are perceived to have failed and they still want to go for a second tenure?
You see, it seemed to me, maybe it's my opinion, that African politics is not about development. That's the picture we begin to see. It's not about development. African politics is about grabbing power and remaining in power. African politics is about forming a clique, conspiring to ensure that power comes, without having an iota of idea what to do with the power. You know, African politics is about, now it is my turn. You know, I have worked so hard to get to this position. Nothing about African politics portrays that they are, you know, there's a vision that those who are coming to power, you know, have for the people. There is nothing like, this is where we are, this is where we will be in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. No. African politics is purely, how do I get that power? It is our turn. Let's zone it to this place. Let's make sure it is the turn of this tribe now. Let's make sure it is this clique that has it right now. Oh, this is what we need to do to have that power. So African politics is not yet about development. If African politics was yet about development, there are certain actions we are taking by way of our legislation that some of the things that we see today will not be there. Sorry to come back home a little bit. You know, if you look at our local governments in Nigeria, it is underdeveloped. Some of us know why it is so underdeveloped. Way back in 2003, to be precise, a particular president, you know, under a particular president, the elections, the way they were conducting local government elections was no longer INEC conducting the election. It was now left in the hands of the state to conduct elections. Since then, it has been difficult to have an election where the will of the people had counted. Now, that kind of scenario is there in our country. And people are looking at it as if, oh, that's the way it is. They even tell you, oh, it's the tradition. But this tradition has not gone down well with, you know, mobilizing development and the grassroots. Yet we leave it there, we say that is the way it is. We leave it there and say that is the power game, that is the way we play it. It's the same in other African countries. It is about power game. It's not about development. It's not about posterity. It's not about looking back to say, when I was president, this and this and this I did, to ensure that my people have a better standard of living. No, it is about me taking power. It is about my clique taking power. It is about that group taking power. It ends there. And it is so unfortunate because you do not expect us to move forward going into the future. So African politics is a politics where I think that we should all sit down and ask ourselves questions.
Okay. All right. So many things that we are still wondering that may count for George Weah. Well, George Weah is 57 by age, and we also understand that he doesn't really have a strong opposition. That's the way it's reported now, except the fact that he has one Joseph Bokai, who is referred to as Gentle Joe, reportedly, who is, is reported to have slept off in an occasion.
Sleeping Joe.
Big Joe. So since then he became, he got the name Sleeping Joe and all that. Now, little wonder, a country that has been so riddled with corruption, and yet no strong opposition, has come up. Do you think Liberia is really ready for, let's say, the kind of political emancipation that that country is looking for?
Not one bit. I'm sorry to be this pessimistic about a fellow African country, but not one bit. Because I did my bit to look at the antecedents of those who are also coming out as candidates in the other political parties. I must assure you, from the vibes that we get, from the studies that we have done, even the entire Liberian people do not have so much confidence in these other ones that are coming. So you won't be surprised that apart from the incumbency factor, George Weah may still end up, coming out tops in this election. The only thing that may happen is that, as against the previous occasion when there was no runoff, there may be a runoff now because you need to have at least 51% of the votes to be declared winner.
Can he get that 51%?
I'm not so sure of that, but he may still come out tops and he will be involved in a rerun election, a runoff election, and all of that. So when you look at it from this perspective, you will know that Liberia itself needs to wake up. It has not, because people still don't have confidence in these other candidates. Remember in the last presidential election in Edo State, in Nigeria, you could tell that the entrance of a particular candidate into the political scene gingered a lot of people who, especially the youths, who erstwhile had been so nonchalant.
Perhaps gave rise to a strong opposition.
Yes, it gave rise to a strong opposition. And you could see what happened, that a party that was hitherto powerless, let me put it that way, rose to the platform, to the podium, and contested very well against the other parties that were known, nationally. And a choice arose. And the people still feel that that choice still persists up to now, especially when we have to consider other elections in at other levels and all that. But in the case of Liberia, it is difficult to now say there is hope arising from there. With the spate of corruption allegations here and there against officials of the George Weah government. It was just too much. You would have expected that a government like this would not even be contesting this election again. Because hopes were placed on you as a young man, a man who was exposed and all that. You have come to the saddle and you have not been able to change the narrative. And yet people are even looking back and saying, I wish we had an alternative. We would just push this man out. But with Sleeping Joe, whom I understand Mr. Yomi Johnson is now supporting, Yomi Johnson shifted his support from George Weah to Sleeping Joe. Yeah. I know, probably displeased with what he has seen and all that. But will Sleeping Joe be able to clip, that number one spot? Is going to be very difficult because the power of incumbency will still work in favor of George Weah.
Now, for Yomi Johnson, we understand that he's a strong political character, in Liberia's politics. So if we have somebody like that supporting Sleeping Joe, how come we still say that there's still not too strong opposition to George Weah?
Well, it's the African thing again. We have had occasions where, I'll take us back to 2020 in Edo State. We had a very strong political force in the APC, in the person of former governor, Mr. Adams Oshomole. And now he was having to support a candidate against the current governor of the state. And you know, if you look at the way Oshomole had begun and how he has risen to that state of political, you know, stardom. Yeah. You would have thought that he would just push the incumbent away like that. But a lot of other factors came to play, and he himself was almost reduced to nothing. And I don't see Yomi Johnson supporting Sleeping Joe in this election, bringing so much to the table in favor of the man he supports. But I just see the power of incumbency and that superstardom status that George Weah had always enjoyed, being the man who played football for Africa and became African Footballer of the Year in his days. What he brings to the table still is powerful enough to help him win the election. And the instrument, the state instruments, they're in his hands. They're in his hands, and it will work out for him. That's Africa.
Now, outside that now, let's look at some other things that may be sentimental. I mean, George Weah, from the very dungeon of Liberian society, from the poor, you know, yes. The lowest, you know, ebb of Liberian society, and of course, he became the president. I mean, having played for superstars, international football clubs and all that, and a lot of persons actually saw him that, okay, let's give this man a trial. All those are the sentimental factor, you know, that probably paved way for George Weah in the first tenure. Now, do you think those sentiments will come up again in the second term election?
Yeah, to an extent, but not to the magnitude we had during his first
tenure.
First tenure, no, yeah. Not to the magnitude, but to an extent, yes, it will. Because it will definitely work out for him, because there's still that element of youthfulness, which is still an advantage for him going into the election. You compare the ages of the other contestants, they are way above him. So that one is still there. Then he can actually appeal to the people that there are mistakes that were made the previous times. You still need to trust us to do a few things here and there. And I hear talk in some quarters that there were also things he put in place, you know, here and there that he could also refer to.
Like the free education.
The free education thing and all that.
Medical facilities
and all of that. So,
but that did not save Liberia, the two pandemics that Liberia went through.
Yes.
The Ebola and, of course, the COVID-19.
And those things are not necessarily meant to save us from those outbreaks. They only help to curtail the menace created by those situations. Because when COVID came into the world, you could see that it was even more devastating in the foreign countries. They found it very difficult to curtail, and there are people who were dying in their numbers. Even in Africa, where we do not have these structures in place, we didn't feel the effect as much as they did over there. So it is not a bit. I think in those aspects, he must have done something. He must be able to refer to it and sway people's mind to the fact that he means well. They could give him a little time to see what he can do to put this in place. But my fear in that regard is that history has told us that most of these African leaders, they become careless once you allow them take their second and last tenure. They become very careless. They don't care because they feel that they're on their way out. The mentality they now develop as a result of that does not aid the development of the people, which is supposed to be their primary motive, you know. So I think that George Weah will win this election, but it may be that there will be a runoff election to, you know, to establish him there as the president for his second tenure.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about, you know, the process now. You talked about process in Africa's election a while ago, which a lot of analysts are not so comfortable with. Now, most people have gone ahead to say that there's actually nothing wrong with our elections, except the process at which candidates are elected. Now, that also is not far from the incumbent. It is the incumbent that sets the process, you know, for most election in Africa. Now, tomorrow's election in Liberia This same process you are talking about now is being set upon by Judge Weah. Now, what is the guarantee? If we have this situation continuously, incumbents setting the process for elections in Africa, what is the guarantee that we continue to have a free and fair election? Because whether we like it or not, the incumbent, they want to win and come back.
Well, what I see is this. This situation that you have painted is something that has affected us as a nation. I like to bring Nigeria into it because unless you are in the middle of it, unless you can actually feel the way it goes, you will not understand what others are going through. What you have just described it happens more even in our country than that small Liberia. Now, the truth of the matter is that you remember when Buhari was about to go for his second tenure, the House prepared a bill for him.
The Electoral Act now.
The Electoral Act that is not operational. Yeah. He was advised, if you do this, you're going to make your coming back very difficult. Buhari stylishly left that document unsigned. Now, when he came back, after all the brouhaha that accompanied his second term in office, and he's coming to power again, he decided to sign the document. The document was celebrated. The 10 issues that were looked at in that Electoral Act, we said, something has come.
The contextual aspect of it now.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, something has come that will really place us in that pedestal. The world will see us and say, that country is serious, especially now that it wants to really hold on to the culture of democracy. Yes, to an extent, it went on well. We study electronic, dimensions were infused and introduced into the whole process. It worked very well.
But with alternatives now, let us also mention that.
Yes, it worked very well. It was supposed to work very well. But those who created it also decided to slap us in the face. All because the power that those in power were the ones who manipulated it to also suit them. So the power of incumbency is something that we need to really, really look at. Looking back, we will also thank our dear former president, who I heard he is on his way to Liberia right now as part of the ECOWAS monitoring team.
The EDAS Forum now.
EDAS Forum in Africa.
Yeah.
You see, during his time, he made a statement that has become very, very, synonymous with humility and the spirit of sportsmanship in electionary contestations. He said his blood, the blood of Nigerian is not what, his ambition is not what the blood of any Nigerian. Now, this incumbent factor is the problem that we have in getting an election that is fair and fair. The power of incumbency is the problem we have. Why it is even the way it is now is that at the state level in our country, for example, sometimes you have a government that is different from a particular party forms the government, and that is not that same party that forms the government at the center. So you will see that because of the variance of interest, you can begin to have an election that is balanced there. But if care is not taken, other things will come in to sway the result in a particular way. But our people have not understood that these elections is for the development of our country. If a democratic nation cannot have an election where you can trust the process, then democracy is still not at the level it should be. Election is one aspect of democracy that sells democracy to the world. In UK today, the man who is there is an Indian. Is it Pakistan or India?
He's from India.
He's from India.
He has naturalized, though. He's a British.
Yes. Just this morning, some days ago, rather, I saw that the Canadian House of the Parliament elected their first black speaker. These sentiments are not in these things. The men who are capable of, staying at the helm of our affair and delivering are allowed to go there. But here it is not so. It is not so. It is a question of, it is power. It's my power. We must do everything to remain in power. We must do everything to remain in power. It's a terrible situation we find ourselves. You know, men like Awolowo and Zeke, they live their life, they have left. The same will happen to everyone who is in power today. The same will happen to those who are aspiring to get to power today. But we lack that basic understanding that the reason we get power is to develop our nation, to develop our communities, to develop our states. But what we do is to hold on to power. George Weah is going to win this election.
Oh, you are so confident.
Oh, he's going to win this election.
Is he your candidate? Are you?
Not really, but he's going to win that election. The way Africa sets out is democratic culture.
What about if he doesn't win?
But that would be a huge surprise. That would be a huge surprise. You know, you say corruption. You talk about corruption.
Yeah, one major thing that, you know, is going to speak against him.
Why is there corruption? Why do we say corruption? Because these people will, they will open the vault and ensure. Already there's the economic quagmire in Liberia is massive as we speak.
The poverty level.
The poverty level is on another dimension.
So are you foreseeing votes buying tomorrow?
There must be vote buying. There must be vote buying. I'm sure there are young men and women in Liberia lining up, waiting to be bought. Waiting to be bought. Yes, there will be vote buying. They will strategize. They will know the areas where they may not have, you know, where there's not their stronghold. They will go to those areas and do what they have to do, you know, because that's the public occupancy. The police are there. The soldier, the army, everybody is there. The paramilitary bodies within the country, they are there. They will mobilize energy and forces. But I don't understand why Africa decides to travel this way at all times, you know.
All right, the program is Africa Discourse on Independent Television. We are looking at what is going to be happening tomorrow in Liberia, talking about the general election and tomorrow in Liberia. We understand that in the capital, Monrovia, activities are already on, and the country is already receiving lots of international observers, just as we said on this program a while ago, that the West African Elders Forum, as headed by our own former President Goodluck Jonathan, has arrived Monrovia. And we also understand that former INEC chairman Tahiru Jega has also arrived in Monrovia. All these are great personalities that are going to be monitoring tomorrow's election. Now, we're going to take a short pause now. And of course, when we return, we're going to be looking at, you know, the power of incumbency vis-a-vis monitoring organizations. What effect do monitoring bodies have on elections? We're going to be looking at all that after this time out. Please stay tuned. All right, thank you so much. The program still Africa Discourse on Independent Television. My name one more time, Evans Nukugi. We're still looking at the election tomorrow in Liberia, whereby President George Weah, who is the incumbent president now, stands as one of the candidates in tomorrow's election. Now, we said that Liberia has been receiving lots of monitoring organizations, big politicians on the continent of Africa. And of course, we also talked about the process that you know, presidents emerge with in Africa. Now, we also said that nothing that observers have said, analysts have said that most times in Africa, nothing is wrong with our elections, but the process at which you know, leaders emerge. The process at which presidents emerge in Africa's election is still so much desirable of you know, explanation. Now, our pharmacist, you know, the election tomorrow, let us look at organizations, individuals that monitor elections now. We saw that in the last presidential election in Nigeria, a situation whereby observers say what they find out in an election. And of course, the power of the incumbent is so huge, it's so great that at the end of the day, a result is announced. Now, can we begin to have a situation whereby those monitoring organizations and whatever they find out in an election can really have an effect on the outcome of elections in Africa? Let's start from there.
Oh, if we want it to be that way, yes, it can be bets. I think it's a formality. It's just like satisfying all righteousness. fulfilling all righteousness to, make reference to observers here and there. I don't know of anywhere in the African continent, especially in our country, Nigeria, where the testimony of a particular group who have come to observe an election will be taken seriously, especially during post-electoral litigation.
Litigation.
Yeah, so it's difficult. It's just like, well, if you don't do this, maybe in some quarters they will not ascribe credibility and legitimacy to your electoral process. So we just put people together and say, let's go and do this. The power of the incumbents is big enough, strong enough to obliterate whatever we may have, we stand to benefit from having observers. I remember in our last presidential elections in Nigeria, the last round of elections, there were some statements made by the EU,
the United Nations,
United Nations, and all of
European
that.
Union.
Yes, you saw the way the courts glossed over it. They didn't make any reference to it. Why would they make reference to it when they cannot come out with figures that will actually show that, yes, what we have said, this is the proof and the evidence we have? They just say things and nobody takes it seriously.
So are you trying to say that the observers, they themselves, they also start on a faulty background? Is that what you're trying to say? I mean, observers come, they say something, they don't also have evidence to prove. Is that what you're saying?
Of course they don't have evidence to prove.
But why would the observers say one or two things about an election and they can't prove it?
But they were not brought there to bring out evidence that the court could put to use. They were brought out to observe, look at the situation that greeted the entire process and collect data and information.
So what is the purpose of observing the election?
Like they release their report. They release their report, which they have done. After releasing their report, maybe in time to come, some generations will find it useful. But obviously, it has not found a way into affecting what took place in the last elections in the country. So it's just to fulfill all righteousness and all of that. But it's okay. We must have those things going on because time will come when they may become very, very useful. No, we cannot jettison the fact that we're having observers here and there. We should have them in every election. Local government election, state elections, and all that. People should observe the election and do their report. There should be arrays of observers, who must write, and let us also compare what they are writing and what they are saying. It's a good one, but I still don't see for now how it will affect the outcome.
Okay, let us also look at the character of, some of the observing bodies now. We talked about the West African Elders Forum as headed by former President Goodluck Jonathan. And of course, there's a body name for that body now, as headed by Tahiri Jega now, former INEC chairman and all that. Now, let us look at the character of these two persons. Without being told, two fantastic characters, you may want to say.
Oh, yes.
Vis-a-vis their observation and vis-a-vis their responsibility that they are saddled with, in this election. Let's look at it.
Oh, you see, I like Jega for a number of reasons. When he started out as INEC chairman, he was very clear where he wanted to take the body to. He laid the framework, the foundation of the INEC we are supposed to have today, except that our current INEC chairman has cast a lot of shadows on some of those things, some of those gains that were achieved starting from Jega's time up to now. We thought he was going to raise the bar and cause a lot of things to change, but that's by the wayside. Jega did a lot to help us have elections that may not have been 100% okay, but they gave us the impression that if we could tinker with this system a little bit, we could have a better system for selecting those who will be our leaders. And for that reason, I really, really appreciate it. Because under his tenure, you had an incumbent president removed from power. he would have decided to dance to the tone of those who were in power.
So don't you also think that may snowball to what may happen in Liberia tomorrow? I mean, an incumbent going out of power, just where now that Jega is involved?
I would be very happy for the Liberian people. It means that they have gone out to make a statement. To remove an incumbent is not an easy deal. And any state, any country that is able to do that, you give them kudos. I'm just talking about George Weah because I do not see how the people can muster all that energy to take him out of power based on the other variables that we are considering. Who are those other candidates? Who are those other candidates? And the incumbency, can they muster force against the incumbency? Will it not be better for them to rally behind one or two other candidates and bring out a consensus candidate among them so that they can have the necessary force to move? Now, because they are going to split votes in their regions. And you are going to have George Weah coming out tops again. That's my prediction and all of that. However, it may not be in one soup. It could still come out from a runoff election. So talking about Jega, I like those gentlemen. They showed a lot of boldness in what they did. And I also like our former president,
Goodluck Jonathan.
Dr. Goodluck Jonathan,
yeah.
who, right from the time he made that move to, concede power to an incoming government, then he got a name in Africa, that the African elders consider that this man is a man of, great wisdom. And this is a man that we could showcase for Africa to see that, yes, we have men like this, that our children can be told about. So, but the question really is, who cares to follow the footsteps of a man like this in our present situation? No, nobody cares. Nobody cares. But right now, Goodluck Jonathan, he should be given more responsibility, especially within the Nigeria. I talk about Nigeria all the time because if democracy works in Africa, in Nigeria, the likelihood is that democracy will work
in Nigeria, in Africa.
In Africa.
Yeah.
So that's why we keep coming back home to talk about Nigeria. So such a man should be recognized. Such a man should be given greater task in this regard. Because the only thing I see that sometimes he is also too docile. He wants to be too politically correct so that he doesn't seem to be dancing this way and dancing that way.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the only thing I see. But at a time like this, Nigeria is in a free fall. It is in a free fall. Men like that shouldn't keep quiet.
Okay. All right, so let's extend this discussion further now. Now, let's take our mind back to what happened in Gabon. Gabon had an election, and of course, the incumbent Ali Bongo won the election. He came back on power, into power and all that. But before he knew it, the military took over. It was still the same corruption charges, allegations that were leveled against Ali Bongo before he eventually won that election. Now, for tomorrow's election in Liberia, going with what has been going on the continent of Africa, most recently, military taking over, are we foreseeing another military coup d'etat, perhaps in Liberia, after tomorrow's election?
You simply cannot rule it out. Let us take our minds back to the events that led to the first coup in Nigeria. There was a wave of uncertainties. The political class were showcasing enormous rascality, irresponsibility. Things that make no meaning and no sense was coming to the fore. Tribalism and all kinds of things. And politicians were taking liberty. Because this man does not support me, we set his house ablaze. It was politics of acrimony. Those who were looting money. Nigeria was suffering. A country before its independence, right after its independence, that the world had looked at as one of the world powers that will emerge because of all the things that we have: human resources and material resources, natural resources. But the military boys could not stand it anymore. No matter how you judge them today, no matter what their foray brought about in our political landscape, they were frustrated. And one of the things that is causing these young military officers to come on board again today is frustration. There is frustration in this country right now.
In this continent, we have...
There is frustration in this country. There is frustration in Liberia. You know, you cannot rule it out, especially for a country. Some of the things that may be holding Liberia back now is you do not experience a civil war in such quick succession and want to experience it again. Probably, it could be one of the things curtailing them.
So you're saying that the two experiences they had now may be enough fear
it may
for
be enough
military not to come into power?
Because, yes, because what has happened in our own country, what has happened in our country over time, you know, there have been rumors of, you know, war, especially...
The last civil war.
Oh, yes. After the last civil war, there have been rumors here that war may just break out here and there. But the way people rise up to say, no, we can't go that path anymore because the experience we had the last time, if you look back on it, you will know that those who are to suffer are the innocent ones.
So Liberia may not also consider...
They may not. I look at Liberia, you know, their fragility, and I just believe that they may want this election to go, but it may not remain so. If, after delivering a particular person to power, things continue to be this way. I was on my way here just now. I saw some of our people rustling to buy fuel here and there. I decided to just stay with them and talk with them a bit, and you could see the frustration written on the faces of these people. I felt so bad in my heart. You know, I felt so bad in my heart because these are people who are genuinely engaging themselves in, you know, putting food on their table, taking care of their children, working night and day. But here is a system that keeps grinding them to ensure that they don't breathe at the end of the day. And here we have people who are falsifying documents and doing all kinds of things to remain in power. You know, this is frustration. And this is what you see in this African country. The Gabonese young man, it has become a dynasty of some sort, a hereditary. The father left it, so he gave it to him. No other person has ruled Gabon over the years. The same people. They enjoy the benefits of being in power. They don't care how much impoverished the people have become over time. It's frustration. You don't blame these military boys. They also want to have a career. Military is a career. A career. They see that they have the instruments to, you know, to discipline the political class. And they just say, how long shall we wait? Nigeria has done so well now to have held back and all this, but we do not know how long this will stay.
Yeah, we have to, it will stay because there's nowhere in the world that military government is fashionable anymore, so we must keep on emphasizing that, whether we like it or not. The war civilian is better than military government. That's, you know, what we all know. Anyway, as we plan to round off this program this afternoon, pharmacist, now let's look at, you know, Liberia one more time. Now, what is your marching word now? What are the things that you want average Liberia? Because Liberia is almost our next door neighboring country here. We also understand that some Liberians even come to Nigeria, you know, and go back to Liberia and all that now. So what are your marching word that we are giving the Liberians as they go on to the polls tomorrow? And lastly, too, Liberia was colonized by the United States of America. But the kind of democracy that we have in the U.S. has not really had any impact on Liberia as a country. What has gone wrong?
Okay, you see, if I had the opportunity to be on national television and I perceive that the large population of the Liberian people are watching me, what I would tell them is, your destiny is in your hands.
Of course, they're watching you.
Go out there and make a choice. Take a look at these individuals who are contesting for that position. Tell yourself the truth. Make a choice. Make a choice. It doesn't matter there's Liberia after the next tenure. The ability to be able to have your choice should propel you to wait for the end of the tenure that is coming so that you can continue to make a choice. When you make a choice like this and it is established that it is you that enthroned people, I'm sure within a short period of time you will have a government that will work in your favor. As for the American people, who colonized Liberia. I'm sorry to say, the American people and of course, people in the Western world, they are not interested in Africa developing. It is not in their interest.
Really?
Oh no, it's not in their interest that Africans should develop. Take an example from what was happening in the Niger Republic. They were not interested in whether the government was doing well or not. They were interested in uranium that was in Niger. What they're interested in is to exploit Africa. That's what I said. So if they can have a government in power who can give them that access, they strike some deals with them. You and I will not be there. These deals are going on behind. And they give them access to those things that they want. They are okay. They introduce schemes to us. They have never been interested in Africa developing. This is another state of post-colonization slavery. It's what we are in Africa. And unfortunately, we have leaders who, because of their selfish desires, they are signing these contracts, you know, officially or unofficially with these people to exploit us. You think we cannot curtail bunkering and stealing of our oil in the high sea? Yes, we can. But because the people in power are involved, you will never see such a thing happening. Because the Western world are involved, you will never see such a thing happening. So that is what we have in Nigeria. They're not interested. Okay. Liberia could die for all they care. But if it is a country where they have vested interest, you will see what they will do.
Okay. All right. So I want to say a very big thank you for coming on the program today. Pharmacist Weah,
thank you so much.
foremost politician with Labour Party in a local government area. And also he contested for the last chairmanship election in Edo State. Well, we have said it that Liberia tomorrow comes. It's going to be a general election in Liberia. And of course, we're using this opportunity to let Liberians know that the future of that country lies in their hands. Now, when we say Liberia, I remember I remember ECOMOG, you know, which is synonymous with the civil war Liberia had. You know, 2 times now. One was in 1989, the civil war, and of course we also had the one in 2003. That was the second civil war. Whenever I remember Liberia, I can't ever forget ECOMOG. You know, and also Ebola virus. So I cannot forget Liberia. And these are, you know, some of the upheavals. You may want to say that Liberia, a country, you know, in West Africa has gone through. So they have the ball with them tomorrow. They have their future with them tomorrow to set aright as they go for the general election tomorrow. Well, independent radio and television, we're going to make sure that we give you tits and bits of tomorrow's election in Liberia. We've got our ward news and, of course, our ward activities reportage. So we ensure that we give you, you know, facts, finding, you know, scenarios and situations as far as tomorrow's election is concerned. Well, thank you so much one more time for finding time to come. All right, so until the same time next week on the same program, my name is Evans Novoge. Goodbye and God bless you.